So we got the line breaks are going to as fast as we really have unique teams. We have YouTube. Look at mine. It's me and you. We'll rock it. We're delaying a couple of minutes to allow the masses to turn up. So, talk amongst yourselves. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, why don't we just do it? We're going to start at 1/4 after. That's my plan. There are so not 103 people in this room right now. There are actually fewer people here than normal, which is curious. Okay, we get to drop after okay, grading way easier. Maybe they're just terrible. Good morning, CS160. How's everybody doing? Thrilled? I hold your fate in my hands, my very hands. Are you in a group? Maybe. Maybe we forgot you. Anything could happen. All right, so we're going to do a small amount of like actual lecture content today, and then the second half, or mostly the second hour of lecture, is going to be all about you guys meeting your groups and starting your group brainstorm assignment. Very exciting. So we're just going to really quickly cover a little bit of material on brainstorming and kind of go over the IDEO method of brainstorming, which is going to be our kind of canonical reference brainstorming for this class. So who can give me one sentence on what brainstorming is?
All of the ideas.
What's that?
All of the ideas.
All of the ideas. Have all the ideas. That's a good start. Give me one more sentence, somebody. Yeah, so the sort of process of letting one idea inspire another, the like serendipity of ideas here as you come up with new concepts and they spawn other thoughts. Other things?
Coming up with a bunch of ideas to achieve some sort of goal.
Okay, so you're not just randomly saying things, you're trying to accomplish some goal. That's a good process-oriented thing. And what is that goal, typically?
To solve some sort of problem.
Yeah, I mean, you went out, you did your like task analysis, you've done your kind of problem definition, you've gone out and you've done your contextual inquiry, and now you've got to kind of synthesize all that stuff and generate some ideas. So we're in the like idea generation part, which if you remember your circle was like phase 3 or 4 or something of the circle over here. And in this assignment, the brainstorming assignment, we're kind of compressing 2 parts of the cycle. So we are doing idea generation and then idea selection, all wound into one. The key to brainstorming is kind of getting the right attitude going into it. And so the enemy of brainstorms, the enemy of like all things good and holy in idea generation is conformity. And I don't know why it's blinking, it's just to trip you out. Conformity and like people wanting to obey is the enemy of creativity. And so you really have to fight like established corporate brands and the culture of your company or your organization or your team to get past whatever hangups people have and get into like creative idea generation. And really the pressure to conform, to like say what you think your boss wants you to say or say what you think your peers want you to say affects your judgment and your perception in like really deep ways. And there's a million different parables and a million different cultures about this. One famous one is the tale of the Emperor's New Clothes. The like chilling American version is McCarthyism, where if everybody is saying one thing, it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong, it just kind of pervades. And what you want to fight in today's brainstorming and brainstorming in general is against that sort of pervasive wrongness. It's not going to help you. It's very important that we should note that the minority voices in the conversation get really well represented. And the way that usually happens is through dissent. So who's this? Come on, everybody fails civics. You.
Alabama's judge.
What's that?
Alabama's judge.
It is a judge, I'll give you that.
Ward.
Stephen Breyer. Is Supreme Court Justice who's kind of known for being the dissenting voice in a lot of Supreme Court opinions. The point of this is that getting creativity and getting like a breadth of ideas really comes from people that like authentically disagree with the status quo and that authentically disagree with the kind of emergent ideas coming out of a group. And it's important that you note that like not everybody's going to be right. Like somebody's right and somebody's wrong in terms of like what you're going to build. But it's important for the brainstorming process to get like some crazy things into the mix that may or may not be plausible down the road and may or may not even be helpful, but just that like kick people out of getting stuck on one idea. And so the point is that the originality of the minority stimulates the majority. The benefits of this sort of dissent are weakened if it's like bullshit. So if the dissent is not real, if you like appoint before the meeting, okay, Jonathan, you are devil's advocate, like it's your job to disagree with everything everybody says, then that really doesn't help. Like it tells everybody else, like you're not the dissenter, you're in charge of like agreeing with us, and everybody knows that the one person that's been appointed is the person that's just like making things up. And so this doesn't really encourage dissent. Believe it or not, this is a thing that people do in brainstorming sessions. They like nominate one person, and they're like, okay, nobody else gets to disagree with this guy. It's not a good plan. All right, so the ideas, the rules that we're gonna play by today are IDEO's brainstorming rules. And these are like everywhere. If you walk into like any innovation lab, design lab sort of thing, you see these like printed up in the corner somewhere, either left there from the 90s or somebody newly enthusiastic about IDEO brainstorming rules. But the underlying principle here is that you always aim for quantity and kind of hope that quality will fall out of that over time. So rule number 1, sharpen the focus. Posing the right problem is critical. Don't be too narrow, don't be too fuzzy. And so when you start a brainstorm, you should have some prompt for that brainstorm. And the goal of this is to get the scope right from the start. So for instance, in this class, we know you have to build a mobile app and you have to design a connected device, like conceptually design a connected device. And so it's not helpful to like brainstorm, you know, ways that you could re-educate the population, like that's out of scope. And so just narrowing down what exactly your focus is, and as this says, not bicycle cup holders, but helping cyclists to drink coffee without accidents. 2, always number your ideas. This sounds like the most simple thing in the world, but people sometimes screw this up. Why would you care about this? Why would you want to, besides this like helps keep track of them, you want to get like 50 to 100 ideas, why would you want to number things?
That's a good identifier. So if you have 2 ideas which are more or less along the same lines but have some subtle differences when you're describing them out as opposed to numbering them, chances are it gets grouped into one.
Yeah, so you could split out like conceptually related but distinct ideas by giving them separate numbers. True. There's a psychological reason that I'm looking for that this is important, and it's related to this bottom bullet. Yeah.
It also you keep track of like how much quantity you're generating so that you kind of leverage to.
Yeah, so it does help you with the like, we can make it to 200 guys, let's do it sort of thing. The other thing that I'm going for here is just that, yeah, Mary?
Allows ideas to take on an identity.
Gee, thanks. Well done. The thing I'm going for here is that it lets you separate more easily the idea from the person that generated it. And so people have a real tendency, you know, say you came up with an idea, it's very easy to say like, well, but that's too much like, you know, Shayna's idea earlier, or Bjorn, that was stupid. Don't say that. But it's better if you can number them, because then you can be like, I really kind of disagree with number 7, but what if we jumped from there into this direction? Or, boy, that's a lot like 12, or that's kind of 13-ish you got there. It's just a way of making the concepts their own thing and then divorcing them from the person that generated them initially. The central principle of the IDEO method of brainstorming is build and jump. And so say that you're kicking around ideas and you're doing this bicycle thing and you get going on like one narrow area. And so in our class, maybe it's like you're really stuck on like novel uses of thermostats. And so you've generated like 20 ideas about, well, we could do this with the thermostat and we could do this with the thermostat and we can do that. That's useful. Like you're building a repertoire of concepts to consider in that space. But at some point you have to jump. You have to say, all right, we're done with thermostats. Like maybe there's another way to fix this problem. Let's jump over into this totally unrelated area. So build, maintain momentum. As momentum starts to slow down, jump into some totally unrelated wacky concept. And the way this often actually happens is that like while you're in the build phase, one of your dissenters or one of your like wackier people in the group says something that makes like no sense. And you write it down over here and you give it a number. And then when you're starting to peter out of ideas on the thing you were talking about, you say, oh, well, what about that thing? Like, does that bring anything else into mind? And you kind of jump over to that side of the space. Concept refinement is challenging in the sort of process of doing a brainstorm. And so you never want to reject ideas just because they don't like immediately seem technically feasible or like the exact right match. You really want to bring unusual ideas in and then start refining them into solutions that make more sense for you. And so this is something you get better with over time. This sort of process of ideation and idea selection is really something you need to practice. It's about expertise and experience in being a designer, but you do get better at like distinguishing like, no, that's just really not gonna work, versus where there's a minor flaw here and we should just like really keep building on this concept. Instead of kind of just using it as a jump point, we're gonna like really build on top of that. The space remembers. So there's this notion of putting all of your ideas kind of physically up in the space. We have some like big freaking Post-it note things here today. Shannon, I'm sure you appreciate me gesturing at you, but behind Shannon, there are big freaking Post-it notes. And we're gonna kind of like let you put these up on the wall in here and get your ideas on them. If we had like infinite space and if you had like this whole room to yourself, what you would do actually is you start putting like related ideas in clusters in like physically distinct parts of the room. And so maybe this is the thermostats part of the room and this is the like blinking lights part of the room. And it really is compelling to be able to like look around the room and say like, oh, we really don't have very much over in like smart toaster land. Let's go back over to smart toaster land and consider some ideas over there. And so it is both a way of like group classification and physically remembering where things are. You'd be surprised how strong spatial memory is actually if you haven't ever worked through the implications of that. So you get things like this. This is from a couple years ago when they remembered to reserve the Woz Lounge, which we did not. So they got windows. We do not get windows. Everybody shake your fist at bears, which took the Woz away from us. But things like this, you just like get all your ideas up there out on different parts of the room, and then you can refer to them more easily. People do things like this, so they're labeling like particularly good ideas here. Some people renumber their ideas to better cluster them, or they'll put like all the odd numbers over here and all the even numbers over here, things like that. Stretch your mental muscles. So people are very big on playing like warm-up games before brainstorms. And if, hey Shayna, can you come up with a warm-up game for us to play before? Andrew came up with something, didn't
Yeah, we were gonna do like.
he? Think on that. And when we get to our brainstorm, we'll try to start with that. I can have you do jumping jacks, but at your like current density, you would probably punch each other in the face. It would be amusing. Anyway, so you start with something that is like not directly on task, and then just try to kind of gracefully transition the thing that is off task into the thing that is on task. As smoothly as you can make that transition, the happier you're going to be. The other thing that people really like to do, although I don't know, maybe it's important, but I'll pretend I believe this for a minute, is to go and like really immerse themselves in the space before doing any sort of brainstorm activity. So like if we were being crafty, we would have like met at Home Depot today instead of meeting here, because then you could be like, oh, well, look, here's all the 2 aisles of like smart appliances, and then you could be inspired by it. It's kind of part of the, if you remember way back to like the very first thing you read in this class, it's kind of part of the like plagiarize step, like go out and see what is going on in the rest of the world so that you can then be inspired by it. And the other thing that people really do is go out and like buy a bunch of crap and bring it in. And so that's everything ranging from like Legos to like toasters, something that's on domain. Getting physical is a key part of this. And so people like to stretch and do jumping jacks and race. You often see people like doing push-up contests in the middle of brainstorms and things just to like keep energetic and keep things moving. There's nothing worse than just like, you can't do a brainstorm like around a big conference table, because then everybody gets bored and looks at their phone and looks at their laptop and hates each other. You do a lot of like, if you're good at like sculpting, you do a lot of work with like clay and Sculpey and things. I am like the world's worst artist, but even I can like make useful things out of Sculpey. And then if you're really crafty, you start like actually work through what would effectively be your storyboards. So you come up with tasks and scenarios, and then you actually like physically get up and say, oh, well, wait a minute, if I'm walking into the room and the light does this, is that really what I want? And you know, that sort of thing. That makes sense? All right, so during the brainstorm, I'll come back to these slides and I'll just leave that list up there and just use it as a check on the rest of your group. So you can say like, oh, I don't know, are we really building and jumping right now? Or are you being too critical? The other key thing that is kind of implicit in all of these rules, but doesn't really strongly get put into one, is don't ever just like reject out of hand any idea. It's just not helpful. So like if somebody says something, no matter how insane you think it is, get it on the piece of paper, number it, and then move on. Like maybe it will inspire you to something better. Maybe it will actually be great. Who knows? Yeah.
So does it ever happen where like, you know, you have a group of people discussing things and then they kind of break up into little clusters? Like,
yeah, so there is some of that. Like people will kind of like, all right, you go. In fact, we saw that in our like IDEO, the shopping cart video, where they were like, all right, you go work on this part of the problem, and you go work on solutions in this direction, and then we're going to come back together. So apparently IDEO does it. If they do it, it's good enough for us. Anybody else? Thoughts, questions, brainstorm? Okay, things that are coming up that you need to know about. Programming assignment 2 is due tomorrow. We now have a mechanism for people to use Canoma Studio without it necessarily having to work on your laptop. So we have Canoma Studio installed on one of the INST remote desktop servers, and you can remote desktop into it from your Windows machine or your Mac or your Linux box and run Studio. It's a little, there's a little draw latency. So like if you're doing like really crafty animations, you'll see that they're a little tiny bit choppy. But other than that, it actually seems to be working pretty well. So try that if you get stuck, and let me know on Piazza if it is a total failure for you. But I think it seems to be working out okay, actually. Shayna has account forms, and if you need a CS160 account form, we'll be wandering around during the brainstorm. Just wait and we'll give you one. If you are like really screwed on this assignment, there's various ways for you to get help. So Peggy and Andrew are going to be holding office hours from 2 to 3 in different buildings. Hi. 380. See, bears, freaking bears. It's all up in our business. 380. 380. All right, so Peggy will be in 380 at 210. Andrew will be over in Corey, allegedly. Super Canoma user Will Dimmitt will be holding a Google Hangout at 5 o'clock. If you have any like more conceptual questions about Canoma, or like want to get into the like how and why of how things are built, will be doing that at 5. I may do a Hangout later tonight. I'll announce it at the last minute if I feel like it, but it will be at like midnight if I feel like it. And then if you go to the Canoma forums, there's like lots of good stuff there. And I do want to clarify just a couple of things for you guys. I don't know like what the rules are in the rest of computer science about like looking at example code and things, but I really don't care. Like look at the samples, like look at the Canoma samples, look at any code you can find on GitHub. I do not care. Go and find those things. You'll be doing us a favor if you like cite in your code with just like a one-line comment like, hey, I pulled this bit from this particular sample on the Canoma website. But for the love of God, don't feel like you can't look at the sample code, okay? There's no other way to learn the platform. So that's cool. And then the other thing is I understand that like there are concerns that some people have about posting too much code on the Canoma forum. If you find yourself in that situation where like you feel like you're just going to have to give away your solution in order to get help, then post on the Canoma forums the details of the problem that you're having, and then make a private post in Piazza to the instructors with like your whole source, and we'll take it from there. I made people yesterday, after I solved their problem in Piazza, go back to the Canoma forums and like post how we solved it. And that's just kind of the workflow we'll use there to make sure that we keep a public record of like how to solve these problems. Questions on that assignment? Yep.
So most of the examples I went through had to go in XML.
Uh-huh.
Do we have equivalents in JavaScript?
So there's a handy button in Studio. At the very top, there's a source menu. And if you source, that's CES, source, whatever. And you go in here, and right here there's a like show Canoma.js. And that just spits out the Canoma.js that is equivalent to whatever XML you have open. So you can load any XML example and then just pop out the Canoma.js for it. It does it automatically, obviously, so it's not like always beautiful, but it's in the right direction. You should be able to pretty easily map what it's doing to like what a person might do. Anything else? Yep.
Documentation of any feedback. It'd be nice if we had like sample code right next to each, say, object that's runs through. Working
on it. High on my list. Yeah, it would be nice. I agree. All right. Reading assignments, you'll have 2 next week. I just want to give you a heads up that like Tuesday's reading is super easy and Thursday's reading is super hard. So plan your time accordingly. Tuesday is just like some Jacob Nielsen, pop dev stuff on the web. And then Thursday is like the worst paper in the world to read. It's Model Human Processor. It's like the most influential paper in this entire space, so I feel like I have to give it to you, but it is a slog. So plan on that being a fight. CS160 people, I gave you 2 really hard readings on Thursday, so have fun. All right, other thoughts, questions? So the group brainstorm assignment is going to be due Wednesday. I expect you guys, basically the format of the group brainstorm assignment, and by the way, it's on B courses and you're going to have to just pull it up on a laptop or something today so that you know what you're supposed to be doing. But the general format is that you'll have this hour, 45 minutes, whatever it is, to start your brainstorm. And then I expect that you will probably need to meet as a group in person one more time between now and Tuesday to like narrow down your ideas and figure out what you're actually going to do. But broadly, the assignment is you have to come up with at least 50 ideas. You have to number them, give like a 1 to 2 sentence explanation of each of them. So it can't just be like pony. It has to be like person will ride a pony to the store in order to get the milk, and the milk will be delightful. And then you need to winnow down the ideas to 1 that you want to propose as your potential class project. And the course staff will be looking at those and giving you feedback, kind of a critique on your proposed project. And then you have to do this like couple page, I don't know how long we said it was, it's in the assignment, write-up of like who your users are and what you think the problem is and how you're going to go about like finding those people to establish whether they really have a problem. Somebody's drilling, that's exciting. So look on B courses. I'll try to put some of it up here, but basically you're just throwing out problem categories and like potential user groups, and then jotting down potential projects you could do to address those problems and help those users. Make sense? All right, instructions are on B courses, and the way we're gonna do this is I will just like shout at a few of you and make you like bearer of the piece of paper, and then everybody else can figure it out from there. Good luck. We're just going to go around the edges of the room. So as many people that can crowd up here, do it. Go around the edges here, go around the back. And if you need to spill out into the like atrium area out here, that's cool. Just try to keep to the walls. And don't wander off because I am going to go around and talk to every single group before we leave. So, cool? Oh yeah, what do you want to do for warm-up?
Tech headlines 20 years from now.
What's that?
Future tech headlines.
Oh, I like it. Should we do it now or when they're in their groups?
It's up to you.
All right. Before you start your brainstorm, when you get into your group, what you need to do is generate as many, and spend like 5 minutes doing this, tech headlines from the future, from 20 years from now. So imagine what the headline of like whatever will have squashed Gizmodo, I think, or Engadget will be 20 years from now. Cool. I don't know how we're going to do this. This is going to be just a huge disaster. So let's go for it. Here.
Adarsh Mani.
Oh, God. This is going to suck. Kevin Albert, who wants to be Kevin here? You can be team captain of B for the moment. Should we just put these out and let people find them? Oh, yes. All right, we're gonna do guest announcers here. This is gonna be great. All right, you can announce group C.
Jeffrey Chen, Ingrid Hong, Jimmy Lee, Anand,
Yeah.
and Melissa. Sorry, I don't want to mispronounce names.
All right, that's group C. Group D.
Rohit, Yuri, Sana, and Dan.
Group E. Who wants to be represented Group E? Group F. Group G. Who else do you represent? Group H representative.
You guys want to slide it?
I love it.
Afsana! Edward, whoa! Are you there, Jessica?
Samuel's son.
Edward, whoa!
Edward. Samuel? Yes. Say one more. Good job.
Edward, whoa!
Okay.
All right.
That's everybody? Yeah.
Forget the tech headlines. This is a great warm up on its own.
I would make too much sense.
All right, who wants to sign this one?
Yes. All right. We got more than one person.
Let's go. Michael.
All right. Now. So you're just so the line breaks.
Wait. This is like.
Yeah, no, mine's weird too.
Yeah.
Mine's like on 2 lines.
All right, somebody hand me your to make sure that there's nothing revealing in that. Okay, perfect. All right, it's on Piazza. If you can get to Piazza. If you're confused, come find me.
Jesse!